So, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Musimbi. Let's move on to the questions. The first one. When we talk about deciding in a crisis, what distinguishes a responsible decision from a merely fast one, and what do you look at the first? Data, people, incentives, or who is the room?
First of all, I'm very happy to be here with all of you. And it has actually made me think I should try to polish my Spanish, because I'll be better next time when I can understand more Spanish than I do. So, so thank you very much for letting me be part of this. And the world in which we live today, actually, we are facing a lot of crises. Everybody knows that. Whether we are talking about crisis on climate change, crisis on conflicts, amazing number of conflicts, wars, etc. The big decisions, but also at macro levels within organizations, at family level, within relationship, especially at a time when, if you work with young people, the biggest issue that you hear is mental unwellness among young people. So if you're in schools, if you're in universities, there's always going to be something that comes up that is happening because of the impact of the world in which we live in, the mental health of young people. These are things that are daily things. During the whole of the 2 days since the opening until now, a lot of data has been given to us about things that we need to pay attention to. And I want specifically to think about, to use as an example, one about city planning, both for efficiency and for fastness and for the safety of people. Who makes decisions when we get this data? Who decides when you have to make the quickest and the best decisions? And my simple answer first is the people that have been trusted with leadership. Mark my words, I'm saying trusted with leadership. People are trusted with leadership when they are elected. They are trusted with leadership when they are appointed. They are trusted with leadership when they are given certain responsibilities like research, bring the facts out. The person who ultimately has to make the decision should never be a sole decider, must be able to draw on all other leaders that have had the responsibility of focusing that particular issue. So if we're going to decide on how we design our cities, but we don't take that data that we had this afternoon into account, if we're going to decide on how our offices run, whether it's a number of staff who are traveling or not, and we don't take into account not the carbon for each individual, but for the whole group of people that one does, then the leaders fail. Wrong decisions are very often lack of proper leadership, wrong leaders, vested interests, neglect of data that is available, political desire to please rather than to do the right thing, etc., etc. So who decides is the leaders. And when we fail in leadership, that is, I think, when things really go wrong. And that's why there's a lot of focus by different organizations on leadership, either as leadership development or as reminding leaders of their responsibilities. Mercedes and I met in a meeting of women scientist leaders who have to think about what they do in their own forums and understand, and I've been part of mentoring the women scientist leaders because scientists have a lot of data, but they often do that data and leave it for other people to use it. But when we mentor scientist leaders, we are telling them, don't only be a scientist, but also be an activist for what you do. And I think the illustrations this afternoon did show us that. The lady who presented last about the carbon, she does the measurement, but it's not enough to produce the data. It's important that if you are responsible for something, you become also an activist for that. And so my life as a leader has been both about activism and leadership, about measuring, and about really pushing people to work collaboratively when they do the leadership, because leadership is never single, it's always collaborative.
The cost, for sure. We are going to talk about the cost of bad decisions. What price of a bad decision almost never shows up in reports?
I think we all make a lot of bad decisions at personal level, at family level, at community level. Every day we end up making bad decisions, and we make bad decisions very often not because we want to make bad decisions, sometimes because we want to make bad decisions, but that is not usually the goal. The goal of bad decisions, I think, one reason we make bad decisions is the narrowness of looking at something with very narrow lenses, because something is, let's say, and one of the persons who talked said, if you have one child and you want a second one, adopt one. That's a very good advice. But what makes us not take that as an advice? One is that we are particularly thinking that he's telling us just that, simply that. But if you link it with the context in which that question is done, you will understand the whole idea about family planning, for instance. Family planning basically is about men and women or families deciding to have a number of children that they can be able to support. And that the choice of a woman is very important in family planning. But to do family planning, it's not a women's issue. It's not one family's issue. It's really something that is much wider. It's a social issue. It's for the whole society. So when people who do advocacy on something like women's rights or family planning or availability of contraceptives in many particular countries, people narrow that information to this as women's issues. Those are one of the things they say is women's issues. But if they link that information with what we had, it's about so that we can be able to have populations that we can be able to provide schooling for, that we can be able to provide better cities, better transportation. We can think of carbon, we can think of jobs, we can think of many different things. When you link all of these decisions, they become one whole of good decisions, and then we can cost them, understanding that if, for example, in my community, if all of us, which used to be the case, had 10 children and then none of them goes to school, we completely repeat the vicious circle of poverty in our communities. But if we can have possibilities of schools available, children can go to school, the number that each family can be able to feed and support, etc., then we are thinking in a way that is larger than one decision. And those kind of decisions really require that we look at the cost and we look at the bigger picture and we look at the way things are related one to the other. It's never one thing at a time. There is always cost to it, and there is always other relationships that need to be taken into account. And I think that the world fails in this area tremendously. So, for example, I am very pleased that we are concerned about carbon. But I'm not pleased that we are not calculating the carbon that it costs when we go to wars. We have not come up with data that says if you decide to go on war in any country for whatever reason, what does that cost in carbon? Because those equipment are much larger than passenger planes. Yes, we need the data on passenger planes, but we need to see the cost of war on human life, the cost of war in development, the cost of war on the psychology of human beings, the cost of war on how it makes us see death so much so that we don't even care anymore. The cost of war on removing the humanity from us, because we are reasoning that it's okay for a certain group of people to be killed for whatever reason, for the good or bad, but we are not linking how much that removes the humanity from us. So I think the decisions we make in terms of whatever issue, we have to be able to link with the others. On the area of carbon, because that's a really big issue too, which I like, climate change, carbon, etc. I work in these areas as well. But there are also areas to which we benefit a lot, and we don't bring them up because we think they're beneficial for us. Social media, the way we use our phones, TikTok. It's really expensive and really harming us, these things. Not the messaging. I'm talking about what it costs to have all of these things together. So what I'm saying is that in an environment such as this, where we are thinking about big issues and thinking how to think differently, even if we don't have answers to everything, we should try to name more than we have been naming. And we should try to name and go into those areas which we are comfortable about, or which we don't want to talk about because we think it's none of our business. For example, when countries go to wars, people like us, ordinary people, we feel helpless and we don't talk about it. Women's activism over many years has really been very strong on trying to demonstrate against wars and militarism and so on, of any type. And I think that this is also one of the areas where I really need to lift up listening to small voices, and sometimes voices that are often discarded, because that's really sometimes where the sense that we call common sense, that is also not so common, really comes from. Yes.
So making bad decisions has a string cost, not only economically, but also socially, especially on a part of society, like you said. Women are not only affected, they are leaders and problem solvers. What pattern have you seen in women who lead well in a difficult context? And could you share an example of a women-led decision that changed the course of a community or an organization?
Thank you. My work is very much related to what I have seen among some of the artists that have been exhibiting today in this museum. Yesterday, I talked to one of the artists who has an exhibition in the museum, and she told me about how she uses ordinary things that we don't often think about as being important for art. Our shoes, sandals, the cooking spoons from the kitchen, etc. I often feel, as somebody who has worked with women from all over the world, I confess that my carbon hasn't been very exemplary, because in my professional life, I have traveled quite a lot. I have traveled to more than 160 countries, but working with communities, working with grassroots women, working in schools with girls, etc., and learning from them what are the issues that are important from them, and what kind of solutions are they using to meet those particular needs, and then how are they really moving the needle? Are they making a difference? And I want to tell you yes. So let me tell you a couple of stories on this. In Papua New Guinea, there was a woman who was concerned about the fact that women did not have collateral to get loans. They didn't have ways to do banking in their own villages. If you've been to Papua New Guinea, you sometimes have to travel a long way on feet, very good for carbon. But the reason is that the infrastructure doesn't exist, so they can't even have the vehicles. We traveled by vehicle for about 3 hours, and then we walked for 5 hours to get where we were going to go, on foot. Very good for us, good exercise. You don't have to go to the gym, but really difficult when they are in those places. So what did she do? What did the woman do? Instead of trying to say women are excluded and they can't get loans, the first thing she did was to find a way of making sure that there was mobile banking in her own village. They tried with the mobile banking, and then she decided this is not good enough. She came to advocate to open a women's bank right into the place where the village was. And she did. She did because we were able to give her support, mobilize really resources for her, but also give her access to forums nationally and internationally Because when she went back to her government after she had had a space to be able to speak at international forums, including us creating a space for her to address a meeting at the United Nations, she got a new way of people seeing her as an advocate for her own country. And she began a bank for women in that particular place. But I can give you several other stories. One of the areas where I have found women really being very, very much change makers have been in philanthropy. I've worked also in philanthropy for quite a long time. The last job that I had was as a CEO of the Global Fund for Women, which was large, and at some point it was the largest grant-making, women-led fund, where we had been able to distribute more than $1 million. We raise the money and then we give it to women. But the issue here is that what I saw was that women donors, women who have resources, when they want to give their resources, they think about the purpose for which that resource will do. So they are able to actually sympathize with a lot of social issues that are often not lifted up. For example, we found women donors gave a lot to the area of education, the area of safety, the area of security, the area of preserving cultures that have got good practices, etc. And they gave quite a lot of funding. That's one area. Another area which is still within the money, I've worked also a lot with women and how women invest their money. A lot of women that have the consciousness do invest their money also in areas that are able to contribute to the greater good, not just for the profit that will come out of it, but also areas that will continue to contribute to the greater good. Another area that I would use as an example is that I have seen many grassroots working women in their own area have been really activists for the preservation of their own environment. If you look at Mexico, for example, or Central America, a lot of the women that have been activists for the preservation of the land, people's land, have been women activists in the area of the environment. That's another area where I have seen a lot of change. And then there's one study that was done over 40 years to try to understand who is it that really brought the idea of gender-based violence, and here I'm talking about violence that happens to women in many different ways. In fact, our speaker from Egypt did refer to an area that you could call a gender-based violence on the way that she was treated, because it's sometimes violent psychologically, sometimes on being denied certain access to certain things, whether it's just being denied to drawing. In my cultures, for example, women were not allowed to drum. You know, drumming is, why would anyone not be allowed to drum just because she's a woman, for example? And women broke all of these things. Actually, the research over 40 years for several countries showed that for the consciousness to address gender-based violence and to bring up those issues that were called domestic violence, domestic because they had to stay inside closed doors, which not today, there's nothing about just domestic violence. The reason it's called gender-based violence is because it's a political issue. It's now in every country of the world, there's not a single country of the world where you'll find women naming the violence that happens. The violence hasn't gone away. But what they have done is that they have removed a big issue that was in the closet. And they have brought it, and now you can discuss it at the government level, at the United Nations. You can discuss it at any place because women wanted to change and bring humanity of both men and women to the table and be able to say, together, we don't only look good, but we can really do good. Men and women not being violent to each other, that is what is progress. Men and women respecting and sharing the platform of decision-making, sharing the platform of science, sharing the platform of money, of any other area. That is what humanity was created to do. And I think that this is an area that often isn't mentioned But women have really brought that consciousness. I appreciate Alstea bringing up many of the feminist examples. And the reason why it's good for people to bring those things up is that they are often not sufficiently mentioned. What we do together that is positive, or what women have brought to the table, is often not sufficiently mentioned. And I think that that's why activists like myself and many others, day in, day out, continue to say, this is not about women, but it's about making better social systems that will serve us to the future, a future that is inclusive. Of course, I want to say that we have gone backwards on some issues that those before us had achieved. There were a lot of really good things that had been achieved by women before us, opening doors, for example, for women to go into professions that were forbidden. You know that for some of us, even women started to study things like medicine or engineering during the lifetime of some of us, people still living, and those kind of things where they shouldn't be. But we see things going backwards. Why would Afghanistan, for example, say that girls can't go to school anymore? What should we do about that? Afghanistan is one country in the world that does not allow girls to have education or for women to go and work in the public places. But I think that in a global world, we should know about that information, and we should be able to say no to it, even if it's far away from us. That's what global connections mean, being able to speak for those who don't have a voice from time to time. And then making possible, part of the work I do now is to ensure that those places which have got this kind of limitations, that there are ways in which girls can continue to have education in other places. So in the last 3 years, I've been raising money through the United World Colleges, where I'm a chair of the board, to ensure that Afghan girls can get education elsewhere. Another retraction, when a country says 75 countries will not get visas for students to study in that country, we go backwards. Because there shouldn't be this kind of borders. People should be able to study everywhere, that they can be able to get permission. And you can just imagine if you're not allowed to study in your own country, and then other countries close the doors for you to study. It's really a very difficult thing for some of the people that we work with. And some of the work that I do is really continuing without ever giving up to do something about these hard issues.
Dr. Musimbi, if you could change one thing about how we educate today, what could it be?
Well, I wonder if I asked that question to each one of you. If you were to change one thing in the world, what could it be? What would it be? Did somebody shout something? Critical minds. Hey, guys, do me a favor, be like Africa. If I ask that question in my community, everybody has one answer. If you were to change one thing, what would it be? Yes? Respect, yes? Humanity, yeah? Yes? Love. You would want more love, or you would change love? Love, yes, yes. To be honest, I very much like many of them, if I was to change one thing, it would be just to regard each other as human beings. And that usually would bring love, and it would bring peace. I would like to see a world in which we see each other as persons, and we are not dealing with our differences as bad things, because I think difference and diversity are good things, but I would also not create borders that exclude people, whether you are talking about big religious thinking, or political thinking, or gender thinking, or sexual thinking, etc. Because the moment that you eliminate someone, you are actually harming humanity. I remember my mother used to tell us when we were very young, every time you point a finger at somebody with anger, 4 fingers point at you. So she used always to say, remember that. Then it means that you have got more more blame. So he said, don't say, because 4 fingers tell you, you're a bad person, not those other people. I think she was right. At that time, I didn't quite understand, but I find that he really was right about this.
One last question.
Yes.
If you have to leave this room with one idea to decide better in the coming years, what could it be?
I'm concerned that we have pulled, or the world has pulled back on the energy on climate change. Because I think that the evidence is overwhelming by what we see in the whole of our planet. And we have only one planet. All of us share that planet. And I believe that one area, which is a micro area, this is a big enough area that any one of us can play a part in a different way. So I would be very much on that. But the way to be able to get there, there are steps. And for me, one of the areas that I really concentrate on that goes to help many other issues that I have talked about is education. Because I feel like the change maker in everything is having the facts that enable you to understand why things are organized the way they are organized, why people think in different ways, why you can be able to say 1 + 1 is 2, mathematics, or arithmetic, or whatever, and why you can be able to say, to question that as well, and say, who said it was 2? The philosophical thinking. But all of these things also help us to widen that debate into areas of ethics, areas of respect, as somebody talked about. And we can put that both in micro-thinking with many different, I want to say many different terminologies at age appropriate or context appropriate or gender appropriate. There's always going to be categories of education. Education for me is not schooling alone. When I say education, it's not schooling alone. We've spent a weekend having education. This education that we have had today must send us to do something. It's not for nothing. All of the facts and figures and illustrations that we had must send us to do something. I will leave here with a message that I think I have to find out how I use that message, whether I'm in my own town, in my own village, I have to find out at least how to use some of that message. When I was in Antarctica with the women scientists, which is also a connection that we had, I came back from Antarctica knowing, as I had always known theoretically, that that's the reservation for the global water. But I saw what had happened. We were conscious about the carbon, but we were really conscious about coming out of there and being advocates for things that we can reach for that, for Antarctica, for the melting, for the climate change, etc. But also translating that into things that are closest to us. I could see what was happening to the animals in the Antarctica. I had that knowledge, but I came back with a commitment to be a stronger advocate for the animals also in my own continent, because I come from a continent where our art is even decorated on our animals. You see a leopard, you see a giraffe, and you ask yourself, who drew those spots? Who made that neck so pretty and beautiful? But those things won't last. That artistic presence of animals that give us joy, it won't last if we don't preserve them in the way that we need to. If the climate change, if the drought that continues to come, if floods come, as they often do, or droughts, and they wipe away big herds, if those animals cannot multiply. So part of what I went back to do is to really devote myself deeper into supporting in different ways those who are in the front line. I am not on the front line, but I can be involved. And it was made easier, I think I did tell this story, when we were in kindergarten in my school. we used to be told each child to adopt an animal, and we were told to be an advocate for that animal for all of your life. At kindergarten, at the age of 4, elephant was my animal. I didn't know the giraffe then, I would have chosen the giraffe. Yes, but elephant was my animal because I liked the fact that it was huge. And when you're small, elephant is even much more huger than it is. And I have tried to live with that and became even more conscious as an adult, and have always tried to understand what is happening. When I got money, I started to donate to the elephant, and now I can widen it out to the bigger wildlife and be an advocate for that. What I'm saying, climate change, because that impacts my elephant, it impacts me, it impacts how we fly, it impacts everything that we want to do. And that's the message that I would say. I would really say that we must not let what we hear, I call the rumor mongers, convince us that this is a subject we can forget. We can't be able to forget that. We have one planet, and it's our responsibility wherever we are to look after that planet. We don't have a second chance. Thank you.
We have the last 5 minutes, so let's open the conversation. I don't know if hay alguna pregunta, questions. A la de una. Okay. So, Joanna, please.
Thank you so much. My question would be, how can we change the mindset of humans that Earth does not belong us, as we're splitting up in countries and flags and so on? When people are moving to the cities more and more, when we're looking at the phones instead of going for a walk, or even kids don't touch Earth anymore and they walk perhaps through a forest of artificial intelligence, how could we, make this shift to change the mindset? Yeah. Is it possible?
I think we can't go backwards. The artificial intelligence is going to grow and grow on us even much more. The danger is that sometimes these machines they are already becoming cleverer than human beings, and that's dangerous. We are aware of it. But I think that we speak things that we don't practice. For example, there is a very much lifting up of indigenous communities and their value for land. But we lift it up in words. What does it say to us in terms of really practice? Sometimes it's just simple things like those. In many indigenous communities, they didn't own land as belonging to one person. It belonged to everybody, so it was easier for people to take the responsibility. So I think when we say, how can we change human beings, the question is really, how can we change ourselves? And I think, I don't have an answer, but I can say that every practice that an individual decides to take contributes to it. It's small things. It's one step at a time that goes all the way, contributes to something. And then, all of us are influential in some ways. One of the things that I do in my syllabus of things is trying to work with people on how you create influence and larger influence. So beginning from where you have the possibilities to make influence. Use your voice, use your money, use your, if you are a teacher, if you are a city planner, if you are the mayor, use the place that you have been placed to make the biggest difference in that area, in the things that you care for. I think this is what activists try to do. And that's what I learned myself from communities that I have visited, that they always try to do what they can change, and sometimes other people see it and they change. So that's a question that first begins with us. Even Michael Jackson sang, I will try first with the man in the mirror. I'll try first with the woman in the mirror. And then thereafter, you can see who else. Yeah. Yeah.
One more? It's okay. So thank you very much.
I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, yeah. No, we have time. We have time. The short one.
Thank you, Musimbi, for your words. I think there's a huge number of people out there that actually need to collaborate. If you're against the climate warming, we always call it climate change, but let's call it what it is. It's getting hotter. We don't use this language enough, I think. It's not climate change, it's getting hotter. That produces massive changes all around the world. So if you're against all the organizations that really contribute huge amounts of carbon to the world, so you're pro-climate cooling and anti-climate warming, the anti-climate warmers need to join with the anti-imperialists. They need to join with the anti-neo-colonists. They need to join with the anti-fascists. They need to join with the anti-racists. There are many people that are struggling against all these negativities. And I think we fail sometimes to join with people that we don't actually see them as our allies, but they're fighting from another angle. I don't know whether I made myself clear now. There are too many antis in there, I think. But we need to find our allies. I think there are many allies that want a better life. And maybe I can phrase that from a beautiful line in one of Nina Simone's songs, or it's something she said. She wrote some fantastic songs. But she was asked one day, what is freedom? And she simply said, freedom is freedom from fear. And there's a lot of fear around today. And that's easily manipulated. So, yeah, to turn again, how do we join with the allies that want for better worlds? I don't think we join up enough. That's my personal experience. And I just like your thoughts on that.
Thank you. If we all got it, I think Alstea named something that exists now, especially in the world of today, so much that we fear and then we retreat. Fear causes retreat. So even when a big issue that looks transparently wrong is placed on the table, people are too fearful. We become too small for ourselves and too small for our world. I agree with you, because of fear. At high political level, but also even at low level, I want to say even at family level, we even fear our children. So we can't be able, as in years past, when there was something that you felt was wrong, you could stand firm and tell your child that this is wrong. In today's upbringing, we've been told that children have their mind too. Don't make your child become timid by telling them. They have their mind. And it looks right. When I think about it, it looks right. But it also looks wrong, that you can see something going wrong with a developing mind, and we won't have the courage to say, no, that is just not right. And this goes all the way from self to family to the political and the micro-political, to the point to which we can destroy multilateral possibilities to communicate. So I agree with you. But I want to say that living in a place where apathy is when you say it's all done, it's all bad, there's nothing we can do about it, and everybody closes their own gate. People don't listen to the news because they say the news are too bad. I don't want to know. I happen to have lived in the US for a long time, and it's one of my countries. So recently I was talking to a friend in the US who told me that they never listen to the news because the news have just become too bad, and the news about their country is really terrible. I think this kind of fear and closure, for me, I think should not happen, because that does not remove the problem. I think even if the news are bad, they should disturb us and they should turn us upside down. They should make us uncomfortable. They should create in us what I often call, part of me is a theologian, I call it holy anger, where you are angry about something, not because you want to break your racket, but rather because if you are breaking the racket, you are breaking it with an anger that something is going wrong, and we take equal responsibility whether we can do something about it or not, because we can then address those things that we can. So I believe if I had to have ability to respond to you well, I would say we must cast out fear. And I know that there are advantages. Fear first defines us. It defines us that we are not able to do something about it, or we don't belong, or we are silly, or we are imposters, or that if you try to do, or it's none of my business, etc. Fear drives us to give us answers that make us helpless. And to make our own self helpless is not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do. And I'm speaking from experience. I could give you many personal stories of experience. If I walk into a room, even today, in an international room, in a place where important things are happening, and I walk out with any one of you who looks like you, usually what happens, the first thing that happens is the people will ask me only those questions which they have defined that a person like me can answer. Because they have already decided that our continent, or people who look like us, have a certain category of things that they should be talked about, and a way in which they should be talked about. If many of us were to live under that fear of how we see now described, then we wouldn't be able to be in spaces such as this and feel comfortable and actually participate with other human beings. So I think the issue with fear is to let it not to define us. And in the world today, that is, for me, a really big thing, that we are letting ourselves be defined by things that limit our ability to do something about what needs to be done. And I just want to encourage each one of us, if there is one thing that you could remember from here, is that do not let, at any time, fear of doing what is right in public or in private be a part of your life. It just doesn't belong in your CV, truly. You can put in your CV, and one of my characteristics is fear. Can you do that? We don't do that. So, but it exists in us. And I want to say that in the last 4 years, I used to be the chair of the Ethics Committee of London School of Economics. I'm still on the Council of London School of Economics. And I found that to look at issues that, to once again discuss that there are two sides to a thing, and there are certain things that are just unethical to do, was really very difficult. And this is with academicians and scholars of very high level. It was difficult because people are afraid to move with how they are ethically informed, because it's not fashionable anymore. So again, we should look at a la mode and remember that clothes go up and down, but the truth is that the human in that cloth remains who they are, and I think that's what should define how we do things, not the mode of the times, the ups and downs of the times. Thank you very much for letting me be part of this. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.